Well, another day, another massacre of civilians in Afghanistan. Something like 32 people are dead and 40 or so are injured. And as you might expect, the U.S. is patting themselves on the back and saying, hey, we did a great job, boys. We got some more of those darn terrorists. But of course, to the United States government, anyone in Afghanistan really is a terrorist or potential terrorist, or in this case, they're calling them undercover terrorists. Now, apparently the locals in the village where this occurred are denying that, saying that these were just, men and their families who were trying to participate in the pine nut harvest. Apparently that's a big part of their local economy there. They have these pine forests, and, I guess Afghanistan is so primitive that they still have, common areas, with forests that, are unowned. So these guys go in the forest and they collect the pine nuts, and then I assume they sell them, in some market, probably in Kabul. And, it's very hard, I'm sure, to feed your family in Afghanistan, considering that there's always bombs falling everywhere, and that, even if you do find a stable job, there's no guarantee that your wherever you work isn't going to be destroyed sometime in the next few months or few years, because the war is never ending. The war has been going on in Afghanistan since the 70s, pretty much nonstop. It's just that, we've had the U.S. here participating for the last 20 or so years. But really, it's a wonder to me that there are any civilians left in Afghanistan at all. I mean, what do these people stick around for? Because not only are you going to get massacred by some military or some, militant group, but then they're going to spit on your grave and say that, no, you were the enemy, even though you were just trying to do your job. Now, the U.S.'s, fairy tale that they came up with is particularly ridiculous in this case, because they're saying that this was some kind of undercover ISIS camp. Because, ISIS is operating in Afghanistan. That's just totally absurd. None of these guys were locals. There were no Arabs from Iraq and Syria or anywhere else, across from the West that were coming into Afghanistan to train for some reason. And, why would they even do that? There's plenty of room in, Iraq and Syria itself. These guys, if you want to be Sunni militants, why would you march all the way into Afghanistan? It doesn't make any damn sense. I mean, it's like they're still trying to use the thing, because there were some al-Qaeda guys in Afghanistan after 9/11. The U.S. just thinks that they can, bomb anyone in Afghanistan and say, oh, well, those guys were probably working for al-Qaeda. Yeah, even though it's been 20 years, you'd think they would have bombed all the al-Qaeda guys out of Afghanistan. I mean, really, what the U.S. is accusing these people of, at the very most, is a thought crime, because they're saying that they were undercover terrorists. Well, how are you a terrorist if you're undercover? Well, that must mean that you're not committing acts of terror, and you're not, plotting to commit acts of terror, and you're not, doing anything that's terrorist-related. It just means that perhaps you have terrorist ideas in your head that you're not saying out loud because you don't want to blow your cover. But really, deep down, you perhaps don't want America occupying your country for the next 40 years. That really is sort of the standard now, I guess, that the U.S. military is using to distinguish between enemy combatants and civilians. It's people who may be thinking bad thoughts that the U.S. doesn't like. Land of the free, people. I mean, frankly, I don't know how those pilots sleep at night, or, even still the officers who are coming up with this, BS excuse and actually putting it out, and typing it out in a statement and then issuing it to the press. I mean, how do you not make your own skin crawl when you do something so despicable? Because, I mean, really, these guys were harvesting pine nuts, okay? They're not, you can't even call them farmers, because they're picking nuts off of trees that are growing in the wild. Okay, this is, some of the most primitive human behavior imaginable. I didn't even know that this sort of thing still happened on the planet. I mean, so how could you, an officer in the greatest and most powerful military in human history, think that these people are any threat to anyone, let alone to you? And of course, this isn't the first time this has happened. I mean, civilians have been getting killed in Afghanistan for as long as there's been a war in Afghanistan, because, they don't want to tell you this, but there were only a couple hundred al-Qaeda guys in 2001 when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, and pretty much everyone else since then have been, civilian combatants or, the Taliban. But again, the Taliban are just essentially local militias that don't want the U.S. around. The Taliban is not exactly a formal military in the sense of, the U.S. Army or the British Army or the Soviet Army. They don't have a clear command structure. These are guys who live in teepees and carry rifles on their back that they stole off of the bodies of dead Soviet soldiers in the 1980s, or dead British soldiers before that. I cannot stress this enough, but these are the most primitive human beings on Earth outside of Papua New Guinea. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I'm saying that in the sense of, what the hell is wrong with you people? These folks are not a threat to anyone, most certainly not to you. People, from a country who could not be further around the world. I mean, that is as far away from the United States as you can get is Afghanistan. I don't think there are very many countries that are further away than that. And certainly you're worried about, goat herders who live in teepees that carry AKs on their back. Because that's really the worst that Afghanistan has to offer. Those are the most, those are the scariest guys they have. Everyone else is just an unarmed civilian who's trying to farm something to eat. And really, it's been mostly civilians that have been killed, even then, compared to the number of folks that you could actually call armed combatants, let alone whether the armed combatants are the threat. Meanwhile, so-called leftists are completely silent on this topic. They don't give a damn about what's been happening in Afghanistan for 18 years. In fact, they think that Trump is way too dovish. That's their problem with Trump. They're saying that Trump, he just loves terrorists and he loves dictators. Why won't he fight this war more passionately? Why won't he, defeat those terrible terrorists in Afghanistan and really, put some, stack up some more body bags? I mean, they were absolutely furious that Trump wanted to meet with the Taliban and the president of Afghanistan during the week of 9/11, implying that the Taliban had something to do with 9/11, which is one, absurd. And two, even if they did, actually were the people behind 9/11, you care more about stupid symbolic nonsense than you do about these 32 dead guys who were just trying to pick some nuts to sell so that they could buy food for their family. I mean, what the hell is wrong with these people? I know that right now it's not me who's crazy. It's it's the folks, it's ordinary people, it's the media, it's our culture that's crazy right now. In 40, 50 years, when I'm older, I'll be able to look back and say, hey, I thought this crap was evil at the time when it was going on. And when America doesn't exist anymore, because it probably won't, it'll be remembered very negatively by a lot of people. I don't know how you look at a story like this, or participate in an attack like this, and go to sleep at night thinking, yeah, we're the good guys. So with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.